What's going on guys, Reisshub back with another video, and this is the second part of your how to improve your VOD reviewing skills, and this video will cover what to look for in your fights. In the first video in the series, I went over the basics of VOD reviewing, so if you haven't watched that yet, I'd recommend you go check that out as well. So this video won't cover every solution to every problem, that's not the goal of it. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be laying out categories of your mistakes so that you can kind of clump yours together and figure out really what you need to work on the most. So then you can set a plan in action to actually fix these areas that you're weak in rather than just continually be weak at them. So I like to keep my categories simple because this way it's much easier to figure out where you're going wrong. So the way I like to split it up is into builds and edits, movement and peaks, aim, advantage, disadvantage, and then avoidance of 50-50s. You can really use whatever categories you want. You don't have to use the ones I'm going to use. However, I feel like these are going to be the most useful for the largest amount of people. There are many more reasons to lose a fight, such as bad positioning on the map, which is a really common example if you're rotating late or something like that. But this is really specifically focusing on once you've already engaged in a fight, be it in the early, late, or mid game, why you die. So I'm going to keep those other things out of this for another video. You don't want to overwhelm yourself by thinking about too many different issues every day, otherwise you're going to forget ones and you're not going to actually be able to improve on those main ones that you're really bad at. That's why I've split it into these 5 categories, as this way it'll narrow it down just to some of the main issues that you struggle with and you'll improve much faster. So let's go through builds and edits first. This is a highly broad topic as there are endless building combinations and different edits that you can do, such as 90s, 180s, retakes, waterfalling, peanut butter edits, wall replacing, and many more. If you notice during your VOD views that you're constantly failing a specific building combination or edit, then note that down. So let's take my example clip here. Notice the mistake I make in my building combinations. My ramp places to the left of the tile I wanted to instead of in the box. If the ramp had gone into the box, then I could have edited on the opponent and had the advantage. Instead, my mechanics for this building combination made my ramp place in the wrong box, getting me killed. I also edited on the bottom left hand side of the wall rather than the bottom right, which gave the opponent in the box the right hand peek and gave me a bad left hand peek. This, plus my poor ramp placement, got me eliminated this time. This particular building combination is something that I continually messed up in games over and over, and I saw a trend in this because when I was VOD reviewing multiple fights, I kept seeing myself messing this up. The way I worked on this, and the way that I recommend everyone to work on this, is to go into creative and first work on it slowly and then build it up over time. This ensures that once you get into an actual game, you'll be able to A, do this quickly, and B, do this accurately, ensuring that you don't waste any materials or mess it up. Now I have no issues with doing this in-game at all, and it's all thanks to the fact that I actually looked back through my games and saw the fact that I was continually messing this up. When you're VOD reviewing, if you keep seeing the same building combinations or edits that you're bad at, slow at, or sloppy at, put a plan into action to ensure that you improve them in creative first and then implement that into your gameplay. So next up is movement and peaks. I also like to include positioning in this section as well. If you watch part 1 of the series, you'll know this is something that I personally struggle with a lot. Making good peaks and having good movement is absolutely integral in a third-person shooter game, and Fortnite is no exception. Poor movement can range from jumping repeatedly when in a fight, moving into players who have a right-hand peek, overexposing yourself to take shots, getting too close to aim correctly, and many other areas. When you're VOD reviewing your games, slow down the fights to 25 to 50% and watch your movement. Poor movement and peaks is something simple that can get you hit for 100+ damage. This means one small mistake can turn a fight around very quickly. So let's take the example clip here. Notice how I hear the opponent through the door and I know he's popping shields. This means that I know he's weak. I run through the door on what is a left hand peek and that gets me killed. So the fix for this is pretty simple. Don't push players that have a right hand peek. Now this is obvious. If you ask almost anyone, they'll tell you do not push on a left hand peek and always ensure that you're peeking from a right hand side. But why do I continually keep to go from the left? And why do so many other players continue to do the same thing as well? Well, it's because they're not actively trying to fix the problem that they have. Your movement is something that's very conscious that you can think about. You're always very aware of where you're standing in comparison to where your opponent is. So moving on a right hand peek is something that you really have to think about and implement naturally. So how do you actually practice this in-game? Well, first go into a low-stress situation, such as a creative fill, maybe zone wars, box fights, something like that that's really low stress, or go into pubs. Here, just slow down your movement a bit and very actively think about what you're doing. Ensure that when you're warming up, this is something that you're doing and you're actively thinking about improving your gameplay. If you do this frequently, every single day, it's just going to become more natural when you're in-game to do this exact same thing in tournaments. If you're struggling to remember this in game, you can actually just put a little sticky note on your screen and put right hand peaks written on it. And every now and then you'll look down it and you'll remember this is what you're actively trying to work on that day, and you'll remember to make better peaks and not push from the left hand side. I've just used right hand peaks as an example here, but just remember under movement and peaks, it covers a lot more than just right hand peaks in general. Bad movements such as just running straight at opponents or jumping repeatedly when you're in fights, like I said earlier, a lot of these are movement issues too. Any movement issues you continually see in your gameplay, write this down and actively work on improving this. So the next section is aim. Typically poor aim just needs more practice, so ensure that if you're a keyboard and mouse player that you're practicing your aim in either Kovacs or the in-game creative trainers or aim jewels, and if you're a controller player, ensure they're using the in-game creative maps to train and warm up your aim. In terms of VOD reviewing, there are two main situations that you can look out for in terms of aim. The first is movement. I said in the previous section that jumping around and not distancing yourself from the enemy while in a box is poor movement, but this also makes it much more difficult for you to aim as well. Ensuring that your movement is thought out and calculated will allow a much better base for you to have much more consistent aim from. The second mistake that you can pick up in your VOD reviews is really poor crosshair placement. Similar to poor movement, it really helps if you look at your fights slowed down to 25% in replays or in a video recorder, as this way you can track where your crosshair is going while you're in the middle of the fight. If your crosshair is consistently too high or too low, too far to the side, this will become really obvious when you watch it slow down. Very similarly to poor movement and poor peaks, this is something you very actively have to work on to improve in your gameplay. Again, each day I would recommend starting off in a low stress environment such as pubs or creative and very actively working on improving your crosshair placement and ensuring that it's always at head level. So the next section is advantage and disadvantage, and this is something I've talked about a lot in my VOD reviews. A lot of players are able to end fights really quickly because they get the advantage by quickly lasering opponents who aren't paying attention and didn't know that they were there. If you've done over 60 damage to the opponent, chances are they're going to try to box up and heal. This makes it very easy for you to get offensive measures off and to end the fight quickly. If in your VOD reviews you notice that you're consistently losing fights because the opponent is often damaging you for large amounts before the fight even starts, then firstly yes, you need to work on your awareness and noticing where the other players are and how they're consistently getting these beams off on you. But also on top of that, you should potentially think about being more aggressive and putting yourself in the situation where you are the one who's getting the advantage over in the fight by beaming the other player first. So the last section here is avoiding 50-50s. A 50-50 is a situation where you and the opponent have an equal opportunity of winning the fight. If, for example, you both spray assault rifles at each other without building, that is considered a 50-50. Running into someone's box with a shotgun and hoping you have better aim than them is a very common mistake that beginner and intermediate players do a lot. This is something you'll almost never see an advanced level or pro level player do because it's just stupid to hope that you have better aim than the opponent. If you have them down to one shot, okay yes, this may be a time where you're going to rush into their box to ensure you clean up the kill. However, even then, if they have a shotgun that's capable of one-shotting you, this is very risky to do. Ideally, the goal in each fight should be to damage your opponent without taking damage yourself, or at least to put yourself in an advantageous position to deal more damage than the opponent, such as a right-hand peek. When VOD reviewing your games, look out for deaths that were caused by you simply just pushing a 50-50. Then think about what you could have done in that situation to gain the advantage over the opponent. When similar situations happen in the future, you will already know what to do and what not to do. So let's take the example clip here. Notice how I have control of the wall in front of the opponent and I edit a bottom left triangle and then cone inside the enemy's box. I then run in the box with my shotgun out and try to win a shotgun fight with my opponent. So as always, let's try to figure out where I went wrong and try to improve our skills in creative first. What I should have done was edit a peanut bar edit, aka a top right triangle edit, and jump shotted my opponent. This would have allowed me to hit the opponent for damage without being able to damage me back. So in my practice routines, I'm going to just ensure that I'm doing a lot of peanut bar edits so that that muscle memory is ingrained within me and I can do it every single time, clean and quick as well. Then I do this in a low stress environment and then finally in arena as well. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave a like if you haven't already and please subscribe if you aren't already as well. We're close to 10k and that is hugely exciting for me. Catch you guys later. Peace.